Hi everyone, hope you're doing really well. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be doing a wrap up of everything that I've read so far this year, all the way from January 1st to today. So if you used to watch my channel, you'll know that I used to do wrap ups and start with my least favourite books and work up to my most favourite. So you guys seem to really like it and I enjoyed doing things that way, so I'm gonna do that today. We're just gonna go back to our roots. It essentially means that I'm gonna kick off with me being quite critical and then eventually work up to me just gushing with praise. So I did unfortunately kick off 2022 with a bit of a bang, a bit of a sad bang. And that book was Social Creature by Tara Isabella Burton. This book kind of promised that it was going to be a mixture of Gossip Girl and The Secret History, and I was really up for that. It sounded really fun. It sounded like a bit of a silly time, but I was like, you know what? Let's just go for it. I haven't read any reviews, let's just dive in. So I gave this 2 stars. This essentially follows a woman in New York who's struggling for money and she befriends a woman who is incredibly wealthy. She owns this massive townhouse. She moves in with her and it turns into this kind of, not even a thriller. I don't even know how I would describe this. I don't think that any part of it was very well executed. I just thought it was all a bit of a mess. I just really don't think this was for me. I really didn't like the writing. I didn't like the characters. I just found it all a bit silly and a bit all over the place, and the ending especially was just a mess. So I didn't love this, wouldn't recommend it. Sad. Next up is an interesting one. It's Mrs. Calburn by Rachel Ingalls. This is a novella. It's about 130 pages, so it's very quick. This is this was actually released in the 80s, I think. To like kind of sum up how odd this book is, I just want to show you this edition. Like, this follows a woman called Dorothy who is like a suburban housewife. She's very unhappily married. Her husband's having an affair. They recently lost a baby. They are not having a good time. So Dorothy basically engages in an affair with a frogman. Basically, there's this amphibian-like creature who has escaped from a facility where they're experimenting on him and torturing him. And he's sort of escaped, he's on the run, and Dorothy hides him in her house. And there's this really interesting compare and contrast between her relationship with Mr. Frogman. His name is Larry, so I should call him by his name. His name's Larry. Between Larry and her husband, and how different their relationships are, how differently they treat her. It's just really interesting. It's a very feminist novel. I really liked a lot about it. I think the main reason I gave it 3 stars is just because I never really felt like that invested in it. Everyone felt quite distant and I just didn't really feel myself getting lost in the story. Maybe because I knew it was going to be so short, I was just sort of like waiting for it to wrap up, if that makes any sense. But that fault is with me, I think, rather than the book. The book itself is great, but maybe novellas just don't really work so well for me. That's something to investigate. But yes, I give it 3 stars and I would recommend it. Come here, you. I can't say this title, oh my god. Next we have 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This is a YA fantasy novel. I read this in a reading vlog when I had COVID. You can go and watch it if you want to. This follows Shiori, who is the princess of her kingdom, and she's basically cursed by a sorceress so that she cannot speak. So with every word that she speaks, one of her brothers will die. She has 7 brothers, I think? No, she has 6 brothers. It's literally in the title, come on. So yeah, it follows Shiori as she can't speak and she's banished from her kingdom. So you just kind of watch her work out what she's gonna do. There are a couple of romances in this. One of them I really just didn't believe and I really wasn't on board with, and it kind of took me out of the story a little bit. I talk about it more in my reading vlog, but for the most part I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really fun YA fantasy. I really enjoyed seeing Shiori's development and her story. I thought it was just really lovely to see, and it was so whimsical and magical. There was a lot I really enjoyed about it. It was very transportive. I really felt like I just wasn't on Earth anymore, which is quite nice. But at the same time, I kind of struggled with some of the action and following what was going on. Felt a little bit lost sometimes. I also think the world building was a little bit lacking and it could have done with a little bit more. But for the most part, I did enjoy this. I give it 3 stars and I would recommend it. I think I'm going to pick up the sequel when it comes out just because I'm curious to see what's going to happen. Next, I read a romance novel called Secrets of a Summer Night by Lisa Kleypas. This was a really fun romance novel, really decent. I'm really glad that I read it. I gave it 3.5 out of 5. The tropes here are like sort of enemies to lovers. Our heroine basically can't stand him, thinks that he's awful, but he's obsessed with her and always has been. So you get to see that kind of unfold, which is very fun. I really love the dialogue between the main characters. I thought it was really snappy and really quick and witty, and I really believed their chemistry. I just thought it came off really well. Lisa Kleypas is just such a good romance author. She really understands the genre. I think she really understands her audience. She just gets it, and I'm such a big fan of hers. So I think all of her romance novels, to an extent, are really good, and this is one of the ones that aren't my favourite, but I still really enjoyed it. There are also some trigger warnings for this book that I'm going to leave in the description, so do bear that in mind. So next, we have My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. This follows Korede, whose sister is literally a serial killer. It's very short, it's very snappy, the chapters are super short, the writing style is quite to the point. It's not very flowery, which I think really worked for this story. There's a lot of elements in this book that I really enjoyed, like blood being thicker than water, familial obligation, and you kind of get to see Korede's like moral battle within herself as she helps her sister clean up the bodies. I thought it was really fun. I give it 4 stars. I read it so quickly because it's just so engaging and so engrossing. I think my only criticisms are that it was a little bit predictable and I could kind of tell where it was going to go, and there were a couple of elements like Korede's sister getting everything that she wants and kind of things being handed to her because she's so beautiful. Like topics like that are so interesting and weren't really explored, and I just would have liked to see things like that being explored a little bit more. So it kind of left me wanting, but at the same time, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was such a great book. And this is a debut, which is so impressive. So a very well-deserved 4-star, and I definitely recommend it. Okay, now we're on the 5 stars, so get ready to see me being very gushy. Next up, we have The 10,000 Laws of January by Alex E. Harrow. This was so beautiful. This follows a young girl called January who discovers a book which tells her all about magical doors all around the world that transport you to different worlds. Fantastical worlds, magical worlds. This book is also kind of a dual timeline as we follow January's story and then we also read the book that January has found, which has a story in itself. So I normally struggle with that kind of thing. I normally find that I really prefer one narrative over the other, but I did not have that with this. Every time we switched narratives, I was so happy to be back into that narrative. I read this in a book club with some friends and honestly I really didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I was so pleasantly surprised and I absolutely loved it, and it's definitely one of my favourite books that I've read so far this year. It's just so magical, so whimsical, so transportive. I tabbed loads, I wept at the end, I found it incredibly satisfying. Everything about this I loved. It is a little bit slow, so I would bear that in mind if you can't bear slower paced stories, but it really speeds up in the last 100 pages and I absolutely loved it. So 5 stars, would recommend. My next 5-star book is Disability Visibility, First Person Stories from the 21st Century, which is a book of essays edited by Alice Wong. This is insanely amazing. It encompasses so much and it's so inclusive. It's a book of essays from an incredibly wide range of voices, and each essay focuses on how being disabled for the writer interacts with being Black, being non-binary, being in prison, struggling with your mental health, being a parent. There's so much in there. I mean, obviously there is so much to overcome when it comes to disabled people's rights, but I really love that this book was such a celebration of disabled people, and it really focused on the fact that being a disabled person and being in a disabled person's body is an art. And there's just so much about celebrating access and gaining social and political power that they desperately deserve. And I just took so much away from this, and I think it's a really important read, and I'm so glad that I read it. I also tried to look up reviews from disabled people to make sure that they felt like it represented them and it didn't miss anything. And for the most part, it seems like they felt kind of seen and heard by this. And I gave it 5 stars, of course. Next is a graphic novel. It is Teen Titans Beast Boy Loves Raven by Cami Garcia and Gabriel Piccolo. If you were not aware, actually I don't think you would be aware, I'm a massive DC girl. I have been since I was about 13. I love this so much. It really does a lot for me and my nostalgia, and I think that they've nailed it and they've nailed the characters. I don't think I can be very objective about these, if I'm being completely honest. I think I'm too blinded by my love for the characters, so I would take my recommendation with a pinch of salt, probably. But nonetheless, for the very small quadrant of you out there who are like DC fans or old Teen Titans fans, I really recommend this. I think it's really great and it's worth reading. So 5 stars. Are you ready to hear about my 2 favourites? I can't choose between the 2 of them which one I love more. This is where my method of going up to my favourite doesn't really work, so I can't choose between these 2. Next we have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is my first Casey McQuiston book. I vlogged reading this. You can watch it up here somewhere. This is a sapphic romance. I absolutely loved everything about this book. Not even just the romance. I think the way Casey McQuiston writes about relationships in general, friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships are just perfect. So delightful, so charming, so relatable. I cannot explain how much I love this book. If you're a fan of the found family trope, of discussing vulnerability and opening up to people, seeing really beautiful friendships and romantic relationships blossom on the page, I really recommend this. I think this is so wonderful. I have no criticisms. I have nothing bad to say. Please read it. Thank you. So lastly, we have Open Water. My goodness. Words cannot describe how talented I think Caleb Azumah Nelson is. I literally have no idea how Caleb Azumah Nelson explored so much in so much depth with so much nuance in 180 pages? Oh, no, not even that, 140. This is a love story, but it really mainly focuses on our main character, who's a black man living in London, and he's struggling with vulnerability, masculinity, the experience of not being seen, as he's kind of being perceived as a threat, as a black man. It delves so deeply into it, and it's so effective, and the writing is absolutely incredible. I think it's astonishing, it's so tender, it's so beautiful. I just think it's perfect, and I want everyone to read it. Okay, good, we're done. And that is that. I'm pretty sure I haven't forgotten any. Oh, I was gonna tell you about what I'm currently reading, because I thought that'd be fun. I'm reading The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. I'm only 25 pages in. I find it really relaxing. Reading it is almost like meditating. It's very like still and peaceful, and I think it's really lovely. But I don't have too many thoughts on it yet because I'm so early on. But if anyone's read this, please let me know. And if you've read any of these books, let me know. If you disagree, agree with any of my opinions, please shout. I'm very interested to know. And also please let me know what your favourite books that you've read so far this year are. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching. Also, not to get sappy, but if you've watched any of my videos since I've come back, I just want to say a huge thank you. And I just massively appreciate it. It really means a lot to me, especially if you've like left a comment. It really makes my day, and I really wanted to say thank you. So that is everything. You know what? If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I can't say that seriously. Oh, I never say that. It feels too weird. But you know what? Feel free. Join us. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Bye.